welcome back to our channel. Join us as we navigate the intricate labyrinth of relationships, offering insightful guidance along the journey. Ethan's arrival at the orphanage occurred before he even reached the age of 5. Bereft of his parents due to their untimely demise, and lacking any remaining relatives, Ethan found himself in a poignant situation. Endowed with a tender and emotive nature, he shed tears ceaselessly, a testament to his vivid recollection of his mother's gentle touch and his father's beaming smile. The abrupt absence of their presence left him feeling forsaken and unjustly wounded within an unfriendly environment. Within the walls of the orphanage that became Ethan's new abode, a motto prevailed among the children: trust no one. Strength prevails. Philosophy I. These youngsters harbored skepticism toward newcomers who exuded remnants of domestic comfort. Most of them were offspring of marginalized, alcoholic, or incarcerated parents. Raised in an environment devoid of love and unacquainted with the rules of the streets, they seamlessly assimilated into the orphanage's milieu. Consequently, Ethan swiftly found himself on the periphery. Mocked and bestowed with the moniker of the mama's boy, he initially responded with bitter tears of resentment. However, over time, he began to adopt an inclination for enclosing himself within the confines of his own imaginative realm. Despite the hardships etched into his childhood, Ethan's heart remained untarnished by bitterness towards the world. He found solace in his dreams, immersed himself in books, and epitomized kindness. Utter a compassionate word, and the boy would radiate with a profound, soulful response. In the midst of this orphanage's landscape, an elderly custodian named Mrs. Avery diligently toiled. Possessing a generous and benevolent disposition, she emanated genuine compassion for the orphan children from the very core of her being. Welcome back to our channel. Together, let's navigate the intricate maze of relationships, offering profound insights and guidance along the way. Ethan's entrance into the orphanage took place before his 5th birthday. Left parentless due to their premature passing and devoid of any remaining relatives, Ethan found himself in a deeply poignant circumstance. Endowed with a tender and sensitive disposition, he wept incessantly, a testament to his vivid memories of his mother's gentle caress and his father's radiant smile. The sudden void their absence left behind made him feel abandoned and unjustly wounded in an inhospitable setting. Within the confines of the orphanage that became Ethan's new home, a creed prevailed among the children: trust no one. Might makes right. Philosophy I. These youngsters met newcomers with skepticism, especially those who carried remnants of familiar comforts. Many of them were offspring of marginalized, alcoholic, or incarcerated parents. Brought up in an environment devoid of affection and unfamiliar with the rules of the streets, they seamlessly integrated into the orphanage's culture. As a result, Ethan found himself marginalized quickly. Teased and labeled the mama's boy, he initially responded with bitter tears of resentment. However, as time passed, he began gravitating toward the solace of his own imaginative world. Despite the adversities etched into his early years, Ethan's heart remained untainted by bitterness toward the world. He sought refuge in his dreams, immersed himself in books, and personified kindness. Speak a word of compassion, and the boy would radiate with a deep and soulful response. Amidst the backdrop of the orphanage, an elderly caretaker by the name of Mrs. Avery diligently carried out her duties. Possessing a generous and benevolent nature, she exuded genuine compassion for the orphan children from the very core of her being. However, upon learning about his life within the orphanage through the compassionate custodian, she comprehended his selflessness and innocent purity. Concurrently, Ethan relished his interactions with the elderly lady, striving to spend as much time with her as circumstances allowed. He genuinely believed that care and warmth held the potential to extend a person's lifespan. Subsequently, Ethan's classmates visited the hospital for practice, transporting him back to the days of his orphanage upbringing. Observing the substantial time he dedicated to Mrs. Isabella, his peers began jesting that Ethan, the solitary soul, had seemingly found a centenarian companion and was now living like royalty on her pension. Undeterred by the jests, Ethan, well-versed in such dynamics from his orphanage days, was most concerned about any untoward remarks being made in Mrs. Isabella's presence. With a fragile heart, it was strictly prohibited for her to endure any distress. One day, Luna, the class's most striking member, confronted Ethan, asserting that his attention toward the old lady was fueled solely by her financial savings rather than genuine kindness. Fixing Luna with a gaze of disdain, Ethan retorted that unfortunately, Luna would never grasp the essence of compassion and genuine love for humanity. His response carried an air of noble conviction, leaving the baffled Luna to hastily retreat. In truth, Luna was not just a beautiful face, she possessed kindness and lacked the typical entitlement often associated with youth. As fate would have it, she held the distinction of being the class's belle. Long had Luna harbored an unrequited affection for him, even as the other boys vied for her attention. Ethan, however, remained impervious to her charms, his focus steadfastly fixed on pursuits other than romance. Luna's heartache ran deep, so much so that she found herself envious of an older woman. But love had scant room in Ethan's life, his attention was wholly claimed by his academic pursuits and labor. Every endeavor was subordinate to his aspiration of becoming a doctor, a dream that necessitated financial backing. Thus, Ethan diligently saved a substantial portion of his scholarship funds along with the earnings from his role as an orderly. On one day, as was his custom, he entered the room to greet Mrs. Isabella, only to discover her absence, an unexpected turn of events that left him disheartened. He had assumed she had been discharged and was crestfallen at the thought of not being able to assist her on her way home. Turning to the nurse for an explanation, he received the heartbreaking news: Mrs. Isabella had passed away due to a heart attack. This revelation struck him with a searing pain, rendering him dazed and motionless. Ethan lowered himself onto a couch, his hands finding their way to his head in disbelief. The news was unfathomable. Just the day before, they had shared laughter and made plans for a leisurely stroll in the park. The weight of not having clasped her hand during her final moments and the absence of a proper farewell gnawed at his conscience. Unchecked tears streamed down his face, yet he made no attempt to wipe them away. Once again, solitude enveloped him. A sudden surge of determination jolted him to his feet. A realization struck: Mrs. Isabella lacked relatives, leaving no one to oversee her final rites. Gritting his teeth, Ethan wiped away his tears, resolved without a moment's hesitation. He took a day off, withdrew his hard-earned savings, and orchestrated a fitting farewell for the woman who had become his anchor. His intent was to ensure the old woman received a dignified farewell. The day of the funeral arrived, tranquil and serene. Alone by the casket, he contemplated bidding adieu to the cherished lady. Abruptly, a gentle tap on his shoulder broke his reverie. Ethan turned to find Luna standing there. Greetings were exchanged, followed by a brief silence, and then Luna extended her condolences. In that moment, she revealed her understanding of the woman's significance to Ethan and expressed remorse for her past hurtful words. Side by side, they stood in hushed contemplation by the grave, each lost in their own thoughts. Time passed, and from this shared experience, Ethan and Luna's bond evolved from friendship to love. When Ethan eventually proposed marriage, Luna accepted with joy, even though grandeur wasn't on the horizon due to their financial constraints. Thus, their special day was celebrated in the intimacy of their home, marked by a bottle of champagne. Gazing into Luna's eyes, Ethan pledged to give her the grand wedding she deserved on their 10th anniversary. Suddenly, a chime at the door disrupted the scene, catching the young couple off guard. The unexpected guest left them exchanging bemused glances. Ethan opened the door to receive a letter. As he unsealed the envelope and read its contents, shock washed over him. The letter was from Mrs. Isabella, and Ethan's vision blurred with tears streaming down his cheeks. Dear Ethan, if you are reading this letter, it means I've been gone for 6 months. You've brought solace to my solitude in these last days. I loved you like a son. Your kindness knows no bounds, and you deserve nothing but the finest. Overwhelmed, Ethan could read no further, his heart pounding with shock. He handed the letter to a concerned Luna. Upon completing the letter, she conveyed to him that Mrs. Isabella had bequeathed her expansive apartment and a substantial bank account to him on that very evening. Sleep evaded the couple for hours as they mulled over the astonishing turn of events. Mrs. Isabella's deliberations about the future and her eventual realization culminating in an unexpected gift replayed in their minds. Following that transformative night, Ethan's perspective shifted, recognizing that healing could extend beyond medical facilities, that genuine care and attention held the power to elongate life. With careful consideration of the advantages and disadvantages, Ethan and Luna made the decision to sell Mrs. Isabella's estate. The proceeds became the seed funding for their vision, a private retirement home. This endeavor was a tangible manifestation of Ethan's aspiration to make a difference. The core of his nursing home rested upon values of reverence, benevolence, and empathy. Meticulous selection of staff followed, as their interactions would shape the residents' experiences. Additionally, Ethan carved out time each day for intimate conversations with the residents, often accompanied by a warm cup of tea. His ambition was to fashion the retirement home into a surrogate family for the elderly who might otherwise be isolated. When the couple's 10th anniversary arrived, Ethan seized the opportunity to orchestrate a grand celebration. Colleagues, dear friends, and the elderly inhabitants were all invited to partake, embodying the atmosphere of kinship he had so ardently cultivated. Hence, the man fulfilled the commitment he had made to his wife a decade earlier. So, what do you think about this story? I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to my story. It was a pleasure to share it with you. If you liked it, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories in the future. And if you have any thoughts or questions about this story, feel free to leave them in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you soon.